If you haven't seen my video entitled Chosen Ones and Self-Defense, in it I urge chosen ones to follow the trail of what's been attacking them to its root. The first stage is realizing that everyone around you is attacking you, and not just individually attacking you, but actually conspiring to attack you. And in fact, one of the most shocking and discombobulating things about being a chosen one is that moment where you realize that there is legitimately a worldwide conspiracy to set up situations to harm you. This, of course, is the opinion of a deranged paranoid schizophrenic who's lost all touch with reality, or at least it would be if we were really wrestling against flesh and blood. Many chosen ones, fascinatingly, aren't actually able to see past the physical, and so they don't call themselves chosen ones at all. They call themselves TIs, targeted individuals, and they believe in worldwide governmental bodies and secret societies that are organizing gang stalking campaigns against them and recruiting everyone around them constantly to conspire against them. This viewpoint is completely divorced from reality, but it's an understandable conclusion when someone only believes in physical flesh and blood beings while also having these symptoms of being attacked and set up. Most people aren't this dense and realize that the only explanation has to be demonic entities jumping in and out of people to organize attacks and setups. So we go from the first stage of observing communities of people attacking you to the second stage of seeing the demons inhabiting these people attacking you. And a great video to watch is a short by Museum of Tarot entitled People Are Losing Their Auras, where results of experiments with his dicyanin goggle aura perception technology revealed that all over the world, about 80 to 85% of people either have no aura whatsoever or have a mangled and diseased aura. This experiment confirmed what many people already suspected, that most people are literally organic portal meat bot NPCs that have all the usual human faculties like intellect and reasoning, but basically don't have a soul or a divine spark. And so, being uninhabited, demonic entities can jump in and out of these vacant meat suits at much lesser cost to their own energy. And when it isn't NPC organic portal people with no aura, it's people with diseased auras, generally resulting from mental illness and trauma. And this allows demonic inhabitation in the same way bacteria infects open wounds. Altogether, 85% of the population at least is hosted by legions of these malevolent lower astral parasites, and so we observe that we really don't wrestle against flesh and blood. But if you were to stop there, that would be a mistake, because you have to trace the root of these demonic entities. Where do they come from? In my video, I argue that they stem from what I call the anti-God. So basically, at the beginning of creation, existence was bifurcated into positive and negative currents, and they coexist equally throughout reality, equally at the level of the universe, not at the level of any one location. For example, Earth leans more negative, there's more negativity concentrated here. This bifurcation of positive and negative is observable in the planets. Venus and Jupiter are only here to give us lovely, beautiful, positive things. But they have shadow planets that are their exact opposites, Mars and Saturn respectively. These are called benefics and malefics. The planets are representatives of higher principles of reality, a bridge to the divine world. And in the divine realm, there's positive and negative. And the benefics and malefics are highly polarized, positively or negatively charged, organizing forces that bring this positivity and negativity into our world. And so it's not too far off to say that these demons that are attacking come from Satan, except many have corrected the record saying that Satan is Saturn. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, except I'm here to correct the record again by pointing out that the planets are just a bridge between physical things and divine things. So it's not really Saturn you should be looking at, it's the divine force behind Saturn that is the negativity and darkness that was born in the universe at the beginning of duality. That is the anti-God who steals and diminishes life, hates, and causes harm and separation. So this is the third stage. It's not just simply the people around you attacking, and it's not just the demons inhabiting them either. Ultimately, it's the anti-God, the God of negativity that's having a go at you and attempting to reduce you and feed on your life force. Being that this is a Kali Yuga, and the Kali Yuga is Saturnian, and our world naturally leans malefic and negative regardless of season anyways, it should come as no surprise that this is the main culprit. But again, I argue that if you were to stop here, that would be a mistake. Because if you look closely, there's something underlying all of the stuff we find in all creation. There is a Satan, an anti-God, but something is pulling its strings, and pulling the strings of the positive God, and pulling the strings of everything that happens. You begin to notice that everything that happens seems kind of predictable, like it's a storybook playing out. If you follow astrology and learn about zodiacal releasing, you realize that this isn't just idle speculation. Zodiacal releasing is verifiable evidence that your entire life is largely predictable and plays out exactly like a storybook that's already been written. You start to ask questions like, what kind of creator God would allow a cacophony of a world like this to exist, this prison planet? And that brings us to the fourth stage, realizing the demiurge has been pulling the strings the whole time. A lot of people say that the demiurge is Saturn. This seems to be a case of mistaken identity. TikTok neo-Gnostics are just assuming that the demiurge is just a stand-in for Satan, and that the demiurge is just here to cause harm, and its nature is only harm and loot harvesting. And many assume that this demiurge basically is only the jailer to Earth as a prison planet, and you just need to escape the solar system upon death to be free of this mean, evil Earth jailer. This is again false, and ignorant of both Gnostic, Platonic, and Neoplatonic descriptions of the demiurge throughout history. The demiurge is described not as an Earth jailer, but as the god of the entire created physical universe that gives everything physical form and organizes it. That's really its two main characteristics. It likes things to be physical, and it likes things to be within its organizing powers. And so the demiurge ultimately ends up being like an author of the book of all creation. It writes stories for consciousness to be a part of from a first-person viewpoint, and it uses positivity and negativity to do this. It insists on giving consciousness a body, a name, and an identity to turn it into a character in a story. And then it uses negativity to harm, diminish, and break open that character. And then it uses positivity to restore, heal, and empower that character. And it does this over and over again in order to create transformation, death, and rebirth of its characters. Now, altogether, you can see the work of the demiurge being something like transformative storytelling, like you'd find in Joseph Campbell's monomyth of the hero's journey. No one planet can really be said to be the demiurge, because the demiurge is really something that unites all planets and all aspects of creation under a common goal: transformative storytelling. With that being said, if we were forced at gunpoint to choose a planet to associate the demiurge with, I'd argue it wouldn't be Saturn, like people say. It would be Pluto, as this is representative of the demiurge's ultimate goal of using negativity and positivity, the god and the anti-god, to break down characters and restore them, to use death and rebirth as a tool of transformation. It seeks transformation because it's attempting to expand the never-ending story out infinitely into all possibility, attempting to solve the problem of its own sense of inherent incompleteness, meaninglessness, and lack of satisfaction in its creation. It creates and writes more and more stories, but it never creates a story that makes existence make sense, or makes everything complete or meaningful. It's always looking outward for more characters and more stories, never realizing that it can never find completeness because its own outward focus on characters and stories creates the fragmentation that disallows things from being joined and reunited in such a way that completeness would be possible. In other words, the demiurge is getting in its own way and putting consciousness through unfathomable levels of harm in the process with really nothing to show for it. This is a very important realization regarding the trail of evil's accountability, because the anti-God, aka Satan, is actually obeying the will of the demiurge, aka the creator God. All suffering and physical and emotional agony is ultimately the creator God's fault, the demiurge's fault. And ultimately, through all creation, it really has nothing to show for it. No conclusive meaning was gained, and no completeness was achieved. Probably the most important video I've ever watched is a video by 60 Skills of Meditation entitled The Place That Yogis Fear, True Enlightenment. In the video, Bob talks about what happens when most spiritual practitioners attempt to project their consciousness completely into the One, aka non-dual light. What he reveals is that most people encounter an entity guarding this realm of non-dual light, aka Source, that dramatically and emphatically insists that you aren't ready to pass into this realm yet, and that you still have too much attachment, or you haven't evolved enough yet, or you still have too much karma. And if you ignore these arguments, this entity starts flooding your mind with horrific scenes from your past and your past lives, attempting to convince you of your inferiority and how you need to stay in creation to evolve to be good enough to pass into non-dual light. Bob, quick as a whip and sharp as a blade, correctly infers that what this guardian entity is saying is a lie. Actually, what you've just encountered is the demiurge. It doesn't want you to return to the One. It wants you to remain a character in creation infinitely and forever, suffering constant death and rebirth as it scrambles to find completeness and meaning in your transformations, always seeking and never finding. You'll find the same attitudes of this entity in the spirit guides and council of wise beings mentioned in Michael Newton's work, recounting his decades-long work of life between life regression testimonies and stories. I call them samsara entities. Upon death, they shame bomb you during the life review to fully convince you of how defective and inferior you are. Then they love bomb you to show you that you are accepted and unconditionally loved, despite being a defective and inferior failure of a being. And now, drunk on love and lamenting your shame, you've been softened up enough for the council of wise beings to convince you of just about any plan of soul evolution for your next life. That incidentally has a lot more to do with the demiurge's storytelling than anything that would, with any degree of success, substantially promote the growth of self-improvement of the soul. That 60 skills video is so important. It teaches what's basically the only way out of this never-ending failed science experiment that is creation. Non-dual suicide. To project your consciousness completely into the One and cross this threshold that the demiurge is guarding. When you do, there is no more stories and no more suffering. Only the completeness the demiurge had been looking for all along. PTMD. Purification, theurgy, monasticism, and disidentification to achieve NDS, non-dual suicide.